Jake Morrison stared out the small window of the shuttle as it approached Harmony Point Station. The massive structure floated in space like a giant wheel, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. He had never seen anything so enormous in his life. The 18-year-old from Colorado could barely believe he was actually here, about to attend the most famous school in the galaxy. The shuttle docked with a soft thump. Jake grabbed his bag and followed the other passengers through the airlock. His heart pounded as he stepped into the station proper. The corridor was wide and bright, with beings of all shapes and sizes moving about their business. He saw tall crystalline creatures with 4 arms, small insectoid beings that clicked as they walked, and several others he could not even begin to identify. A woman in a dark blue uniform waited near the arrival gate. She smiled when she saw Jake. "You must be Jake Morrison. I'm Commander Hayes, the human liaison here at Zenith Academy. Welcome." Jake shook her hand, grateful to see another human face. "Thank you, ma'am. This place is incredible." Commander Hayes led him through the station toward the Academy section. As they walked, she explained the basics. "You're one of 12 humans selected for this year's exchange program. It's a big deal, Jake. You'll be representing all of Earth here." The weight of her words settled on his shoulders. Jake nodded, trying to look more confident than he felt. "There's something you should know," Commander Hayes continued. "Most species here are very different from us. Physically, I mean. Earth is what they call a death world. High gravity, dangerous animals, extreme weather. Most aliens come from much gentler planets." Jake frowned. "What does that mean for me?" "It means you might be stronger and tougher than you realize. Just be aware of that. Be careful not to hurt anyone by accident." They reached the student dormitory section. Commander Hayes showed Jake to his room, gave him a schedule, and left him to settle in. Jake unpacked his few belongings and lay on the bed. It felt strange, slightly too soft and too small. Everything here was built for being smaller than humans. The next morning, Jake made his way to the cafeteria for breakfast. The large room buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Translator devices built into the walls converted everything to understandable speech, though the effect was disorienting. He grabbed a tray and looked at the food options. Most of it looked completely alien to him. "First day?" a voice asked behind him. Jake turned to see a girl with red hair and green eyes. She was human, which made him relax immediately. "Yeah, I'm Jake. Lyra. I've been here about 2 months now." She pointed at various food stations. "That one's safe for human digestion. So is that one. Avoid the blue stuff unless you want to spend the day in the bathroom." Jake laughed and followed her recommendations. They sat together at a table near the window. "So what's it like here?" he asked. Lyra took a bite of something that looked like scrambled eggs but was bright orange. "It's interesting. The classes are good. Most students are nice once they get over the shock of meeting a human. But there's one thing you should prepare yourself for." "What's that?" "Gym class." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Gym class, really?" "Trust me," Lyra said. "It's going to be weird. Humans have a reputation here, but most aliens don't really believe it. They think we exaggerate about Earth's conditions. You'll see what I mean soon enough." That afternoon, Jake found his way to the gymnasium. The space was huge, with a track running around the perimeter, and various equipment scattered about. About 30 students were already there, representing at least 10 different species. Jake noticed the tall crystalline beings Lyra had called Velnari, some insectoid creatures with multiple limbs, and several others he did not recognize. A being that looked like it was made of living rock stood at the center of the gym. Its voice rumbled like grinding stones. "I am Professor Krell. This is physical education and combat readiness. Today we begin with basic endurance assessment. You will run 8 laps around this track. That is approximately 2 miles in human measurement. Begin when ready." The students lined up at the starting point. Jake took his place, feeling slightly nervous. He had never been a star athlete back home, just a normal kid who played some sports. The other students looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and what might have been concern. Professor Krell signaled the start. Jake began jogging at what felt like an easy warm-up pace. He had run 2 miles plenty of times in high school gym class. It was not particularly difficult. Within the first lap, Jake realized something was wrong. He was pulling ahead of everyone. Not by a little bit, but by a lot. He glanced back and saw the other students already struggling. The Velnari student's crystalline skin was changing color, turning darker with effort. The insectoid students were clicking rapidly, which he guessed meant they were stressed. One particularly proud-looking Velnari student was pushing himself hard to keep up with Jake. His name tag read, Zixthar. His forearms pumped as he ran, but Jake could see him falling behind even as he tried to maintain the pace. Jake was not even breathing hard. He completed the second lap, then the third. Behind him, several students had already stopped, sitting on the ground with medical drones hovering nearby. By the fourth lap, he was completely alone on the track. The other students watched from the side, some with their mouths hanging open in shock. When Jake reached the halfway point, Zixthar suddenly collapsed. His crystalline body hit the track with a sound like breaking glass. Small cracks appeared across his skin. Medical drones rushed to him immediately, surrounding him with scanning beams and medication mists. Jake slowed down, concerned. "Is he okay?" Professor Krell's rocky face somehow conveyed surprise. "Continue your run, Morrison." Jake finished the remaining 4 laps. His breathing was elevated but not terrible. He felt like he could keep going if needed. When he crossed the finish line, he checked his watch. 12 minutes. Back home, that was a decent time, but nothing special. Here, apparently, it was something else entirely. Professor Krell approached him slowly. "You are finished with the assessment?" "Yes, sir." "Should I start the actual workout now?" There was a long silence. Several students who had recovered enough to pay attention stared at Jake like he had grown a second head. "That was the workout, Morrison. That was the endurance test for the entire term. Most students take 30 to 40 minutes to complete it. Many do not finish at all on their first attempt." Jake felt his face grow hot. "Oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Do not apologize. You have done nothing wrong. However, you should report to my office after you shower. We need to discuss this." The rest of the day passed in a blur. By evening, Jake's performance had spread throughout the entire academy. His communicator buzzed constantly with messages and requests. Video clips of his run appeared on multiple social networks. Alien students whispered and pointed when he walked past. Some looked amazed. Others looked frightened. Zixthar recovered in the medical bay, but the damage to his pride was worse than the cracks in his skin. He had been humiliated, beaten easily by a creature he had thought was soft and weak. The resentment showed clearly in his eyes when Jake came to check on him. That night, Jake sat in his room feeling confused and isolated. He had not tried to show off or make anyone feel bad. He had just run at a normal pace. How was he supposed to know that normal for humans was impossible for everyone else? His communicator chimed. Commander Hayes wanted to see him immediately. Jake made his way to her office, wondering what else could possibly go wrong on his first day. Commander Hayes looked serious when he entered. "Sit down, Jake. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Your performance today has created a diplomatic incident. Several species representatives are claiming that humans must be genetically modified or using enhancement drugs. They say it's impossible for a natural being to be that physically capable." Jake's eyes widened. "But I'm completely normal. I'm not even athletic by human standards, I know, but they don't believe it. The Coalition Council is demanding proof. You're going to have to undergo official testing to demonstrate that your abilities are natural, and that all humans are like this." Jake slumped in his chair. "When?" "Tomorrow. Representatives from 7 different species will be watching. The test will be broadcast live across Coalition space. Everything you do will be analyzed and recorded. What if I fail?" Commander Hayes looked at him steadily. "You won't fail, Jake. That's what scares them. What if you succeed? What happens when the galaxy realizes that humans are this much stronger and tougher than everyone else? What happens when they understand what a death world really produces?" Jake stared at his hands, suddenly aware of the strength in them. Strength he had always taken for granted. Strength that here in this place among the stars made him something between a wonder and a threat. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Tomorrow the galaxy would be watching him, and nothing would ever be the same again. The gymnasium looked completely different when Jake entered the next morning. Barriers had been set up around the edges, creating a large testing area in the center. Behind the barriers sat dozens of alien officials, all watching intently. Cameras floated in the air, recording from every angle. The whole thing felt more like a trial than a test. Commander Hayes met Jake at the entrance. "Remember, just do your best, be honest. Don't hold back, but don't show off either. We need them to see the truth." A human doctor approached them. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and kind eyes. "I'm Dr. Thane. I'll be monitoring your vitals during the tests. If anything seems dangerous, I'll stop it immediately." Jake nodded, his mouth dry. He could see the alien officials talking among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a strange mix of sounds. Some were clicking, others humming, still others speaking in languages the translators struggled to convert. A tall Velnari in elaborate robes stood up. His forearms gestured dramatically. "I am Ambassador Quirrell. These tests must be rigorous and complete. We will accept nothing less than absolute proof." Professor Krell entered the testing area. His rocky form seemed even more imposing than usual. "We will begin with strength assessment. Morrison, approach the lifting platform." Jake walked to the center where a large bar with weights sat on a raised platform. The weights were marked with symbols he did not recognize, but Dr. Thane quietly told him they started at 100 pounds. "Lift the bar over your head," Professor Krell instructed. "We will add weight until you reach your maximum." Jake gripped the bar and lifted. 100 pounds went up easily. They added more weight. 150, 200, 220. At 270, Jake started to feel the strain. At 300, he was working hard. At 340, he managed one final lift, holding the weight over his head for 3 seconds before lowering it carefully. The gymnasium was completely silent. Ambassador Quirrell stood up, his crystalline face showing clear disbelief. The equipment must be malfunctioning. "Recalibrate it immediately." Professor Krell nodded to his assistants. They spent 10 minutes checking the equipment. The weights were accurate. They asked Jake to try again. He lifted 340 pounds 3 more times. Each time the result was the same. Dr. Thane spoke up. "For context, Ambassador, Jake is a moderately athletic human. Not an athlete, not a soldier, just a normal young man who plays some sports. Elite human weightlifters can lift well over 500 pounds. One of the Quarian observers, a being with a large head and fragile-looking body, actually fainted. Medical personnel rushed to help while the other officials sat in shocked silence. Ambassador Quirrell's skin had turned a dark purple color. "This cannot be natural. No species can be this strong without genetic modification. We can test his genetics right now if you wish," Dr. Thane said calmly. "You'll find he's completely natural and unmodified." The next test was endurance. Jake stepped onto a treadmill that could adjust its speed automatically. The test was simple. Run until exhaustion. The officials expected the test to last maybe 10 minutes based on their best athletes. Jake started jogging. The treadmill increased speed gradually. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Jake's breathing increased but stayed steady. Sweat began to soak his shirt. At 30 minutes, some of the alien officials started shifting uncomfortably in their seats. At 40 minutes, they were whispering urgently to each other. At 47 minutes, Dr. Thane called for a stop. "That's enough, Jake. You need to stay hydrated." Jake stepped off the treadmill, breathing hard but not collapsed. "I could have kept going," he said, reaching for a water bottle. A young Kriltan student had been watching from the side. His insectoid features made his expressions hard to read, but his body language showed fascination rather than fear. During the break, he approached Jake cautiously. "My name is Nexus. May I ask you questions about Earth?" Jake nodded, glad for a friendly face. "Sure. How did your species become so strong?" Jake thought about it while drinking water. "We didn't try to become strong. Earth just has really high gravity compared to most planets. 1G, right? And there are lots of predators. Dangerous weather, diseases, temperature swings. Our ancestors had to be tough just to survive. The weak ones didn't make it." Nexus's antennae twitched rapidly. "So you are not warriors. You are survivors." "I guess so. We didn't evolve to fight. We evolved to not die." The words seemed to affect Nexus deeply. He returned to his seat, clearly thinking hard about what Jake had said. The third test was reaction time and agility. An obstacle course filled the center of the gymnasium. Moving platforms, swinging barriers, narrow beams, and walls to climb. The record time was 8 minutes, held by a Philosian who was naturally aquatic and supposedly very graceful. Professor Krell explained the course. "You must navigate from start to finish. Touching the ground is failure. Begin when ready." Jake studied the course for a moment, then started. He jumped to the first platform as it swung past, caught a hanging bar, pulled himself up, and rolled under a swinging obstacle. His body moved almost on instinct, adjusting to each challenge as it came. He tracked multiple moving objects at once, his human eyes and brain processing the information faster than he consciously realized. When he reached the end and dropped to the ground, he checked the timer. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. He had beaten the record by nearly half. The alien officials were no longer hiding their reactions. Some looked amazed. Others looked genuinely frightened. Ambassador Quirrell sat rigidly in his seat, his forearms crossed tightly against his body. The final test was the most controversial. Pain tolerance and healing. Jake had to hold his hand under progressively colder temperatures while performing complex tasks like puzzle solving and fine motor control. Most species would have pulled away immediately, their pain receptors triggering overwhelming discomfort. Jake lasted 4 times longer than the galactic average before Dr. Thane forced him to stop. Dr. Thane then showed the officials a cut on Jake's arm from 2 days ago. It was barely visible, just a thin pink line. A similar wound would take most species 2 weeks to heal, he explained. Humans heal from most injuries within days. Ambassador Quirrell finally stood, his posture stiff. I must admit that these abilities appear to be natural. However, this raises serious concerns. If one average human possesses such capabilities, what of your trained soldiers? Your athletes? Your special forces? The question hung in the air. Commander Hayes rose to address the assembly. Humanity has always been honest about our capabilities. We submitted detailed biological data when we applied to join the coalition. The problem is that you interpreted our data through the lens of your own physical limitations. When we said our soldiers could march 20 miles carrying equipment, you assumed we were using different measurements or exaggerating. We were not. A Thoraxian official, another rock like being similar to Professor Krell, spoke up. What assurance do we have that humanity will not use these abilities for conquest? Commander Hayes met his gaze steadily. The same assurance you give us. Our word and our history. Yes, humans have had wars. So has every species in this room. But we chose to stop fighting each other and reach for the stars instead. We chose cooperation over destruction. Our physical strength does not determine our moral character. Our choices do. The assembly ended with no clear resolution. Some officials seemed convinced. Others remained suspicious. A few were openly hostile. As Jake left the gymnasium, he felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort. That evening, he sat in the cafeteria with Lyra and Nexus. The young Krilton had become surprisingly friendly after the tests. Many of my people are frightened, Nexus admitted. They see humans as predators now. Lyra stabbed at her food angrily. That's not fair. Jake hasn't hurt anyone. Fear is not always fair, Nexus replied, but I think I understand better now. Humans are strong because they had to be. Strength alone does not make someone dangerous. Intent makes someone dangerous. Jake appreciated the words but still felt troubled. He had not asked to be a symbol or a representative. He just wanted to study and learn and maybe make some friends. Instead, he had become a subject of galactic debate. Later that night, alone in his room, Jake received a message from his parents back on Earth. They had seen the broadcasts and were worried. He assured them he was fine, though he was not entirely sure that was true. As he prepared for sleep, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Jake's communicator lit up with an emergency alert. Someone had sabotaged the gymnasium equipment. The sabotage was sophisticated and deliberate. If anyone had used the equipment the next day, they could have been seriously injured or killed. Security footage showed a masked figure, but the identity was impossible to determine. The only thing clear was that someone at the academy did not want humans proving their capabilities. Someone wanted them gone. Jake lay awake for a long time staring at the ceiling. The tests had been difficult. The scrutiny had been uncomfortable. But this was something else entirely. Someone here saw him as enough of a threat to commit sabotage. The question was who and what they might try next. Outside his window, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings that crawled between them. But for Jake Morrison, those dramas had become his entire world, and tomorrow would bring new challenges he could not yet ema. 3 weeks passed since the official testing. Jake's daily routine at Zenith Academy had become something of a spectacle. Every morning when he went to the gym, students from various species would gather to watch him exercise. They treated it like a performance, which made Jake deeply uncomfortable. He was just working out, doing the same things he had done back home. But here, lifting weights or running laps was apparently entertainment. Some students were genuinely friendly about their curiosity. Nexus came to the gym regularly, asking questions about training techniques and human biology. A female Thoraxian student named Vorna had also become a regular companion during workouts. She was stronger than most species, though still not close to human levels, and she appreciated having someone who could keep up with her. Others were less friendly. Zixthar and his group of Velnari friends watched from a distance with obvious resentment. They whispered among themselves and gave Jake cold stares when he passed in the hallways. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lyra continued to be Jake's closest friend. She had been at the academy longer and understood the social complexities better. One afternoon she pulled him aside after class. "You need to be careful," she warned. "You're becoming a symbol whether you want to be or not. Everything you do is being interpreted as representative of all humans." Jake sighed. "I'm just trying to live my life, I know. But when you helped that Quarian student reach a high shelf yesterday, half the station saw it as humans being gentle protectors. When you accidentally broke that door handle pulling too hard, people saw it as humans being dangerous and destructive. You can't win." Before Jake could respond, Professor Krell's voice boomed across the common area. "Attention all students. This year's Galactic Games will include several new events designed to be more inclusive of different species' strengths. Additionally, we are introducing the Deathworlder Challenge, a special event for species from high-gravity, high-danger planets." Students immediately began talking excitedly. The Galactic Games were a major event, a friendly competition between species that celebrated diversity. But the announcement of a Deathworlder Challenge created mixed reactions. Some students seemed excited. Others looked worried. A few days later, another human student arrived at the academy. Kyle Patterson was taller than Jake, with an athletic build that came from years of competitive swimming and rock climbing. His arrival caused fresh waves of concern among the alien students. Jake met Kyle in the cafeteria. "Welcome to the circus," he said, shaking the other young man's hand. Kyle grinned. "I heard about your famous run. Sounds like you've been having fun." "If by fun you mean causing interstellar incidents, then sure." The next day, Professor Krell asked Kyle to demonstrate his swimming abilities. The academy had a large pool designed for the aquatic Philosian students. Kyle dove in and began swimming laps. His speed was remarkable. Within minutes, officials were checking the lap counters, convinced they must be malfunctioning. Kyle's lung capacity was equally impressive. He held his breath underwater for 4 minutes while the watching Philosians, who were actually aquatic, needed to surface for air every 40 seconds. The demonstrations continued. Lyra participated in a gymnastics exercise. Her flexibility and body control, completely average for a human teenage girl, exceeded what even the most trained alien athletes could achieve. Every new display of human capability widened the gap between species and deepened the concerns some aliens felt. Then the sabotage incidents escalated. Equipment in the gym continued to mysteriously break, but only when humans were scheduled to use it. Nutritional supplements in the human dormitory were tampered with. Anonymous messages spread across the station's social networks, claiming humans were taking illegal performance-enhancing drugs. Dean Salazar, the Academy's human administrator, launched a formal investigation. He was a careful politician who had been trying to smooth over interspecies tensions for months, but even his diplomatic skills were being tested. Jake and Kyle suspected Zixthar was behind the sabotage. The Velnari student had been humiliated by Jake and seemed to hold a deep grudge. But Vorna disagreed. "Zixthar is proud and angry," she said in her rumbling voice. "But he is not technical. These sabotages require knowledge of computer systems and security protocols. Someone smarter is behind this." The training sessions before the Galactic Games revealed even more surprising truths about human capabilities. During a climbing exercise, Kyle scaled a vertical wall that took most species hours to climb. He did it in 6 minutes using only his hands and feet, no equipment. When a shocked Quilton official asked to examine Kyle's hands, expecting to find climbing claws or sticky pads, Kyle simply showed his normal human fingers. The official stared at the hands for a long moment. "How is this possible?" Kyle shrugged. "Grip strength and finger tendons. We evolved to climb trees to escape predators and find food. It's just normal for us." The breaking point came when a formal protest was filed. Zixthar, backed by a group of Velnari students and some officials from other species, submitted an official complaint to the Academy administration. They argued that allowing humans to compete in the Galactic Games was fundamentally unfair. It was like allowing heavy machinery to race against runners, they claimed. Dean Salazar and Commander Hayes had to meet with coalition representatives to address the protests. The meeting was tense and lasted for hours. When it finally ended, Commander Hayes called an assembly of all Academy students and staff. She stood at the front of the large auditorium, her expression serious but determined. "I want to address the concerns that have been raised about human participation in the Galactic Games. I understand the complaints about fairness, but I need you all to understand something important." The room was completely silent. Even the usual background noise of different species' movements and breathing seemed to quiet. For 15 years since humanity joined the coalition, we have been accommodating. We have lived in stations with lower gravity than our home. We have avoided physical activity so as not to make others uncomfortable. We have downplayed our abilities and made ourselves smaller to fit in. We have been diminishing ourselves to make others comfortable. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Galactic Games are supposed to celebrate diversity, not enforce uniformity. Every species has unique strengths. Quarians can share thoughts across light years. Kriltans can coordinate perfectly with thousands of their kind. Velnari create art that speaks to the soul. And humans endure. We survive, we adapt. Should we apologize for that? Ambassador Quirrell stood up from where he sat among the officials. But the physical advantages are too great. How can other species compete? Perhaps they cannot, Commander Hayes admitted. Not in physical competitions. But humans cannot compete in telepathic challenges. We cannot create crystalline art. We cannot survive in pure aquatic environments without equipment. Should those species be banned from competitions where they excel? The argument continued for another hour. Finally, the coalition officials reached a decision. Humans could compete in the Galactic Games, but in a separate exhibition category for the first year. If appropriate systems could be developed to fairly handicap or categorize events, full integration might come later. Jake felt mixed emotions about the ruling. He did not want to be segregated, but he also did not want his alien friends to feel inadequate. That evening, he was walking back to his dormitory when Vorna approached him. "You seem troubled," the Thoraxian student observed. "I don't want to make anyone feel bad about themselves," Jake admitted. "I didn't ask to be stronger than everyone else here." Vorna's rocky features somehow conveyed warmth. "You cannot apologize for what you are. Your strength is not an insult to my weakness. It is simply a difference. I am stronger than a Quarian. Does that make the Quarian less valuable? No. We each have our place." Her words helped, but Jake still felt the weight of expectation on his shoulders. That night, sleeping in his quarters, he was awakened by alarms. Red lights flashed throughout the dormitory. His communicator screamed an emergency alert. Jake tried to stand, but immediately fell to the floor. His body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every movement was agony. He looked at the gravity indicator on the wall and felt his blood run cold. The artificial gravity in the human dormitory had been hacked. It was now set to 2.5 times Earth gravity. In the other rooms, he could hear Lyra and Kyle struggling. The increased gravity was crushing. For any other species, this level of gravity would be immediately fatal. Their bodies would literally be crushed under their own weight. But humans had evolved in 1G. 2.5G was survivable, barely. Jake dragged himself across the floor, his muscles screaming in protest. Every breath was difficult. His heart pounded as it struggled to pump blood against the increased gravity. He reached the emergency panel on the wall and managed to pull himself up enough to hit the alarm override. The gravity slowly returned to normal. Jake collapsed, gasping. Security teams arrived within minutes. Medical drones scanned all 3 humans for injuries. They had bruises and muscle strain, but nothing permanent. They would recover. An alien species would have died. The interrogation room was small and cold. Marcus Webb sat with his hands on the table, security restraints glowing softly around his wrists. He was in his mid-40s with gray streaks in his dark hair and tired eyes. Commander Hayes stood across from him, while Director Chen, a high-ranking coalition official, watched from behind a one-way window. "Why?" Commander Hayes asked simply. "Why would you try to kill your own people?" Webb looked up, and his expression was complicated. Not cruel, not evil, but filled with a strange kind of conviction. "I was trying to protect them, to protect all of us. By crushing them under increased gravity, I didn't think they would be there, Webb said quietly. I was trying to make the equipment fail during tests, to make humans look unreliable, weak, unable to handle the technology. I wanted the exchange program to fail quietly so humans would be sent home. Commander Hayes leaned forward. You've been here 5 years. You helped build this program. Why destroy it? Webb's hands clenched into fists. Because I've seen what happens when people understand what humans are capable of. I was a soldier before I came here. I fought in the border wars before humanity joined the coalition. I've seen human violence up close. I've seen what we can do when we decide to hurt others. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. If the galaxy truly understands our physical capabilities combined with our history, they will turn against us. They will see us as the threat we actually are. I thought if I could make us look weak, unreliable, unable to adapt, then maybe they would just leave us alone. Maybe we could fade into obscurity instead of being feared. The confession spread quickly through the station. The scandal was enormous. A human official had nearly killed 3 human students. His reasoning, twisted as it was, came from a place of fear about humanity's own nature. Director Chen took charge of the situation. She was a practical woman who had spent decades in coalition diplomacy. She met with species representatives, academy officials, and students to address the crisis. Her message was clear. The games would continue as planned. This incident would not derail the cultural exchange. The opening ceremonies for the Galactic Games arrived 3 days later. The Academy's main arena had been transformed into a spectacular venue. Thousands of beings packed the stands while millions more watched via holographic broadcast across Coalition space. Each species took turns showcasing their unique abilities. The Quarians performed a telepathic demonstration where they synchronized their thoughts to create beautiful mental images that even non-telepathic viewers could perceive through special equipment. The Kriltons displayed their swarm coordination with hundreds of individuals moving in perfect patterns. The Philosians created underwater light sculptures that took everyone's breath away. The Thoraxians demonstrated their endurance by walking through a chamber heated to temperatures that would melt most metals. Then it was humanity's turn. Jake, Kyle, Lyra, and a newly arrived student named Alex Carter took the arena floor. Alex was a martial artist with years of training in multiple disciplines. The 4 humans had spent days planning their demonstration. They had decided not to showcase combat or violence. Instead, they would demonstrate human versatility through a combination of athletics and art. The performance was designed to show not just what humans could do, but who humans chose to be. Music began, something classical and moving. Jake started with parkour movements that flowed like dance. He ran up a vertical wall, flipped backward through the air, and landed in perfect balance. Kyle followed with acrobatic movements that seemed to defy gravity. Lyra performed gymnastics that combined strength and grace. Alex demonstrated controlled martial arts forms that showed both power and precision. The performance built to a finale where all 4 worked together to build a complex structure from modular pieces. Their coordination was perfect. Their strength made easy work of components that would have required machinery for other species. They completed the construction in under 2 minutes, something that would take a mixed species team 15 minutes or more. The message was clear. Humans were capable, yes, but they chose cooperation over domination. They chose creation over destruction. The crowd's response was enthusiastic. Nexus started a chant among the Krilton section that spread to other species. Not everyone was convinced, but the demonstration had shifted something in the atmosphere. The competitive events began the next day. In the sprint race, Kyle covered 100 meters in just over 10 seconds. The closest non-human competitor, a Thoraxian, finished in 24 seconds. In swimming, Kyle's time would have qualified for Earth's Olympic trials. The aquatic Philosians, swimming in their natural element, still finished a full minute behind him. Lyra's gymnastics performance left the judges struggling to find appropriate scores. She completed maneuvers that were theoretically impossible for any other species present. Jake's marathon run took 3 hours and 14 minutes, a respectable but unremarkable time by Earth standards. But he was the only participant to finish the full distance. The second-place Thoraxian completed about 60% before exhaustion forced him to stop. The gap was undeniable and uncomfortable. No matter how much the organizers tried to create fair competitions, humans simply operated on a different physical level. Then came the Deathworlder Challenge. This was the event specifically designed for species from high gravity, high danger planets. The course included sections with variable gravity from half G to 2.5 G, zones with extreme temperatures, areas with reduced oxygen, and physical obstacles requiring both strength and endurance. Jake and Vorna were the only human and Thoraxian students present. They entered the course together, and immediately the difficulty became apparent. Jake struggled in the high-gravity zones, but his training on Earth had prepared him for exactly this kind of stress. Vorna excelled in the extreme heat sections where temperatures climbed to levels that would kill most species. In the cold zones, she slowed dangerously while Jake pushed forward. About halfway through the course, Vorna became stuck at an obstacle that required both heat resistance and strength. Jake backtracked to help her, taking damage from the heat himself but getting her through. Later, when Jake was struggling in a high-gravity climb, Vorna used her superior strength in those conditions to stabilize the handholds for him. They crossed the finish line together, arms around each other's shoulders in mutual support. The judges declared it a tie for first place. The crowd erupted in applause. It was the moment that redefined the entire games. After the competition, Professor Krell took the stage for the closing ceremonies. His rocky voice carried across the arena. I have been teaching for 40 years. I have trained warriors from every coalition species. I have seen strength in many forms. But I have learned something important this week. He paused, his ancient eyes scanning the crowd. Strength without wisdom is merely destruction. These young humans have shown both capability and character. They could have dominated every event. Instead, they chose to demonstrate cooperation and creation. That choice matters more than any physical ability. An elderly Velnari teacher named Pryler, who rarely spoke, stood up slowly. The entire arena quieted to hear him. I was part of the coalition committee that approved Earth's membership 15 years ago. Many opposed it. They pointed to human history of warfare and violence. They feared what humans might become if given access to our technology and resources. Pryler's forearms gestured expressively. But we approved the application. Do you know why? Because every species in this coalition has a violent history. My own people, the Velnari, had a civil war that nearly destroyed our entire civilization. The Kriltans conquered and enslaved multiple neighboring planets before their cultural awakening. The Thoraxians were feared as brutal warriors across 3 star systems before they developed their philosophical traditions. His words carried weight earned through centuries of life. We did not invite humanity to join us despite their capacity for violence. We invited them because they chose to transcend it. Judge them not by what they can do, but by what they choose to do. The arena erupted in applause. Even some of the skeptical officials were nodding. The message had broken through. The games ended with a parade of all species together. Jake, at the request of a young Velnari child who reminded him of Zixthar's younger sibling, carried the excited youngster on his shoulders. The image of a human carefully holding an alien child became one of the most shared pictures across Coalition space. That evening, Director Chen made Jake an offer. The Coalition has formally requested humans to join the peacekeeping force, not as soldiers or warriors, but as rescue and recovery specialists. There are missions that are currently impossible for other species: high-gravity worlds with disaster survivors, extreme environment rescues, long-duration operations. We need people who can do what you can do. Jake looked out at the stars through the window. 6 months ago, he had been a normal kid from Colorado. Now he was being asked to help shape humanity's role in the galaxy. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course, you have time. But Jake already knew what his answer would be. He had learned something important at Zenith Academy. Strength was not something to hide or apologize for. It was something to use wisely to help others, to build rather than destroy. That was the choice that mattered. That was what would 6 months passed like water flowing downstream, steady and inevitable. Zenith Academy had transformed into something quite different from the place Jake first entered. The gymnasium no longer felt like a stage where he performed for shocked audiences. Instead, it had become a place of genuine learning and cooperation. The changes started small. Professor Krell restructured the physical education program completely. Now there were species-specific training groups where students could work at appropriate intensity levels for their biology. But there were also optional integrated sessions where students learned from each other's unique strengths and methods. Jake found himself teaching more than competing. 3 times a week he ran training sessions where alien students could safely push their limits with proper guidance. Under his careful supervision, Nexus had improved his endurance by 40%. Even Zixithar attended the sessions now, though he came quietly and kept mostly to himself. The relationship between Jake and Zixithar had evolved in unexpected ways. One afternoon, about 3 months after the games, Zixithar approached Jake in the common area. The Velnari student's crystalline features made reading emotions difficult, but his body language spoke clearly enough. "May I speak with you privately?" Zixithar asked. They walked to an observation deck overlooking the stars. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Zixithar's shoulders sagged. "I owe you an apology. I have been carrying resentment and anger toward you since the first day. You did nothing to deserve it." Jake shook his head. "You don't have to apologize. I do. My behavior came from my own insecurity. Velnari culture values grace and artistic achievement. We take pride in our physical elegance. When I saw how easily you surpassed me in the run, it made me question my own worth. I felt diminished by your existence. The honesty was surprising." Jake chose his words carefully. "I never meant to make you feel less. I was just being myself. I know that now. Through our conversations and training sessions, I have learned something important. Worth is not comparative. My value does not decrease because you are stronger. We each bring different gifts to the galaxy. I have been working on a sculpture series about this realization." They talked for another hour, and by the end, something had shifted. Not quite friendship yet, but understanding. Mutual respect. It was a start. Lieutenant Maya Foster arrived at the academy in Jake's final term. She was a human peacekeeping officer, confident and professional, with the bearing of someone who had seen real action. She came to give a presentation about the Coalition Peacekeeping Force's new Human Integration Initiative. The auditorium was packed with students from multiple species, all curious about how humans would fit into the Coalition security structure. Lieutenant Foster's presentation used holographic displays to show recent missions. "The Peacekeeping Force is not a military organization," she began. "We respond to disasters, mediate conflicts, and protect civilians. For years, certain missions have been impossible, because they occur in environments that are lethal to most Coalition species. That has changed with human involvement." She showed footage of a recent rescue operation. A passenger ship had crashed on a high-gravity planet with a toxic atmosphere. The planet's gravity was 1.4 times Earth standard, which meant instant death for most Coalition species. The human rescue team, wearing basic environmental suits, had operated in those conditions for 72 consecutive hours. They had saved 47 lives across 6 different species. "This mission would have been impossible before," Lieutenant Foster explained. "Standard rescue drones do not have the strength to move through that gravity while carrying survivors. Other species cannot endure those conditions long enough to complete a proper search. But humans can. This is the role we are filling. Missions that require extreme endurance, high gravity tolerance, and long-duration operation in hostile environments." After the presentation, she met privately with Jake, Kyle, Lyra, and Alex. "I'm authorized to offer early recruitment to exceptional candidates. You 4 have proven yourselves here. The Peacekeeping Force needs people like you." Kyle accepted immediately. He had always been action-oriented, and the rescue work appealed to his nature. Alex was interested but wanted to finish his full term at the academy first. Lyra surprised everyone by declining. She had different plans. "I'm going to medical school," she announced, specializing in comparative species biology and emergency xenomedicine. "Someone needs to understand how to treat humans and aliens in crisis situations. That is where I can help most." Jake struggled with his decision. The work was important and meaningful, but he had also come to love teaching at the academy. Over the past months, he had discovered a talent for helping others push past their perceived limitations. He had helped students from multiple species achieve things they thought impossible. The academy hosted a cultural festival, while Jake was still deciding. Each species shared traditions from their homeworlds. The Velnari displayed crystalline art that sang when light passed through it. The Kriltons performed coordination dances with hundreds of participants moving as one. The Quarians shared telepathic poetry that touched the mind directly. Earth's presentation focused on human diversity. The human students showed how even within one species, there were vast differences in culture, language, belief, and expression. Videos from Earth showed Chinese New Year celebrations, Brazilian carnival, Indian Diwali festivals, African tribal ceremonies, and dozens of other traditions. The message was subtle but powerful. If humans could overcome their internal differences and coexist peacefully, surely the coalition could embrace diversity too. The festival was interrupted by emergency alarms. A cargo ship had collided with the station's outer ring, causing a hull breach. Multiple workers were trapped in a collapsed section, exposed to vacuum and filled with dangerous debris. The area was structurally unstable and could collapse further at any moment. Standard rescue protocols would take hours to deploy proper equipment and rescue drones. The trapped workers did not have hours. They had minutes, maybe less. Jake made his decision in seconds. He contacted Commander Hayes and volunteered. Kyle joined immediately. Vorna and her brother Kes, both Thoraxian students with high durability, also stepped forward. Together, they suited up in emergency gear and headed to the breach site. The rescue was everything Lieutenant Foster had described and worse. The collapsed section was a nightmare of twisted metal, exposed wiring, and zero-gravity zones mixed with areas where artificial gravity still functioned erratically. Jake's human strength allowed him to move debris that would have been impossible for rescue equipment to handle. Kyle's climbing ability let him reach survivors in difficult positions. Vorna and Kes used their heat resistance and structural knowledge to stabilize sections that were on the verge of total collapse. But it was not just human capability that saved lives. It was cooperation. Vorna's understanding of load-bearing structures prevented Jake from accidentally causing a further collapse. Kes's ability to withstand extreme heat let him cut through a sealed door that was protecting survivors but also trapping them. Jake's endurance allowed him to carry 3 injured workers simultaneously through a long corridor. Kyle's precision in zero gravity enabled him to navigate unstable areas that would have been death traps for anyone less skilled. They rescued all 8 trapped workers, 2 Velnari, 3 Kriltons, 1 Philosian, 1 Thoraxian, and 1 human engineer. When they finally emerged from the damaged section, medical teams were waiting. The survivors were injured but alive. One of the Velnari workers was an official who had previously advocated for restrictions on human activities within the coalition. As medical drones treated his injuries, he looked at Jake with something like wonder. "Thank you. I was wrong about your species. Completely wrong." The rescue crystallized Jake's decision. He realized he did not have to choose between teaching and rescue work. He could do both. The peacekeeping force needed trainers as much as it needed field operatives. He could help prepare the next generation of rescue specialists, while also responding to emergencies when needed. Graduation ceremonies arrived on a clear day. Metaphorically speaking, since the station had no weather, the auditorium was filled with students, faculty, and guests from across Coalition space. Director Chen gave the opening address, acknowledging the tumultuous year. "Change is never comfortable," she said. "This year has challenged us all. We have confronted prejudices we did not know we held. We have questioned assumptions we thought were certainties. We have learned that difference is not danger, and capability is not threat. The students graduating today are pioneers in the truest sense." Jake was chosen to give the valedictorian speech. He stood at the podium looking out at the diverse crowd, seeing species from across the galaxy sitting together. Nexus sat with his Kriltan family. Vorna waved one rocky hand. Even Zixthar was there, his crystalline form catching the light beautifully. "When I first arrived at this academy," Jake began, "I thought the biggest challenge would be the academics or making friends across species barriers. I never imagined the challenge would be helping others understand that difference does not equal danger." He paused, gathering his though.